The very first road formally surveyed was Simon Street, going from Official Bay down the bottom of the hill up to top of Kaiwa Pass, which is the top of the hill, from where the survey party was camped up to the highest point in the land around. And that's the length of Simon Street. And then the second road was a road whose intention was to connect the two groups of Europeans living on the isthmus, which was the Europeans here in Auckland and the Europeans out in Cornwallis. And so a road was built from that original road, Simon Street, going out to Cornwallis, and that is the road going out to Cranhappy, and so it was called the Cranhappy Road. Nowadays, the name Cranhappy Road only goes as far as Ponsonby Road, but in early deeds at Lands and Deeds, they're still calling the Great North Road Cranhappy Road out past Waterview, out south of Point Share, but it's still being called Cranhappy Road. And there is a Cranhappy parish out there too. The view up the Queen Street Gully, the horizon in the distance was Cranhappy Road. Cranhappy Road was on the horizon, and of course it's empty, there's nothing on it, it's a country road. It exists only as a row of pegs. And right back in 1843 or 45, 43 I think, very early on, very early days, the Nathan family built a house, this house here. And you can imagine from Auckland, that's as far as you can see is up the top of the gully, and there's this one house right in that position there, very powerful, dominating position, showing the power and domination of the Nathan family in the history of Auckland. ... And but Nathan, I'm finding it hard to follow. The Nathan family seem to live there at some times, but at other times, quite well-known and famous people lived there. The first one, and perhaps the most famous, was when George Grey arrived as the new governor. Shortly after he arrived, quite shortly after he arrived, days, weeks, the original government house down where the modern government house is now in the university grounds, the original government house was burnt down. This is 1848. And rumour has it that Grey didn't like the house because he was away at the time it was burnt down. It was an insurance job. And so where did Grey live? Where was Government House? Where was the next most noble house for him to live in Auckland? If Government House had burnt down, it was this one here. And so Grey shifted into this, and this became the acting Government House. And so not only was the most dominating building geographically in Auckland, it is where the governor lived. Goodness gracious. And then Grey left it, and then during the Waikato Land War, General Cameron, who was in charge of the British Army, that was his house. So the Waikato Land War started from that house as far as General Cameron was concerned. Kinder, famous artist, photographer, Kinder House over in Parnell, the first headmaster of Auckland Grammar, and he started Auckland Grammar a year before the school was built. He started it in a private house, which is this house here. Auckland Grammar School started in this house. And then eventually, the last person to have lived there was Thomas Keven, who was involved in gold mining in Coromandel, and the very early attempt at gold mining in Coromandel in the early 1850s, it fell over. Didn't work at all, and a number of people lost their money, and Keven lost his reputation, having been the person who made the most money out of it. It's how he was able to buy that house, I think. And I've still got to confirm this, but the house, I think, was burnt down, possibly arson, and it already had the reputation. It was then labelled. It acquired the label of St. Keven's as a sarcastic reference to Thomas Keven, and it's now the site is now St. Kevin's Arcade.